Hi, everyone. We're going to be getting started here now as people continue to join in. Just to give you a brief introduction, I am Karianne Koza. I head up the Global Operations and Member Experience and Executive Forums. I thank all of you for joining us today, and I am so excited on a personal level to welcome Jane Finette as our speaker in today's Expert Insight as we close out the month of March, a month of reflection around inclusion and diversity. During March, we have been bringing our Executive Forum leaders, and especially women leaders, dedicated spaces of connection, exchange, and impact around inclusion and diversity. And we wanted to, of course, engage and focus around the benefits of IND that I think, we're all in agreement now. The research has repeatedly shown that gender and ethnic diversity and performance go hand in hand, and that as we invest and live our IND strategies, our businesses are more creative, innovative, agile, and therefore resilient. But I have to say the way we were thinking about approaching March really changed when we started to look more in detail around what is happening to women during the pandemic and to see how aggressive it has been in sort of the wearing away of advances that took women, hundreds of years to achieve. And what we have heard from our members is that sometimes the IND efforts, as a crisis comes up, goes kind of on a back burner. And actually, when we look at the larger picture, those qualities of innovation, resilience are going to be so needed as companies and communities attempt to recover from the crisis. 2021 is going to be a transformational year. There's no better time to be talking about this. And so we've, focused on exploring what we as leaders, and especially women leaders, can do to ensure that IND remains a core part of our agendas during the continuing pandemic and as we start on that road to recovery. So when we talk about personal and professional and business growth in executive forums, we like to talk about awareness and alignment. So awareness on what's actually happening, the breadth of it, the impact, how complex it is, what best practices that others are using, the impact that we ourselves would like to have, and then aligning to be able to act and lead with purpose. And so our hope is that the exposure to ideas, best practices, collective intelligence, real stories can act as a catalyst to support your business performance, organizational health, and hopefully that ripple effect contributing to the wider effort to revive economies and communities. So Jane is here with us today. Jane is a passionate advocate for women and girls, a nonprofit leader and author. She is self-proclaimed obsessed with accelerating social change and advancing a fairer, more equitable world. Some of her past work includes senior leadership roles building community at global organizations such as Mozilla, eBay, Sotheby's, reaching hundreds of millions of people. And she is a certified coach and executive leadership expert. In 2020, she was actually awarded the Women Forward Gold Award from the Business Council of Peace for her work and commitment to advancing women. We're going to put some resources for you in the chat as we move through the talk. Something I do want to draw your attention to is that Jane founded the Coaching Fellowship in 2014, and this is a really great nonprofit organization to check out that helps advance young women and social change leaders and their work throughout the world. They've put 1,000 women, over 1,000 women have graduated from their fellowship program to date, around 70 countries, and they now form the Women of Impact Alliance, the largest body of young women social change leaders. Jane is the author of the upcoming book, Unlocked: How Empowered Women Empower Women. That's going to come out in August of this year. And that's what we're going to be really focusing on today. Jane is going to talk about some of the work that she's been doing for that book and talk about the inspirational and real world impactful stories of women working to advance women and girls around the world. And we're going to talk about some easy practical keys for how everyone and every leader can help everyday women rise and thrive. So the leaders in this room are doing some amazing things. We're going to put our collective intelligence to the table today with Jane and ask ourselves, how do we as empowered women and empowered leaders empower others? So I'm going to give it away to Jane now. We're going to be able to look at comments and questions in the chat and question and answer. And as always, we are recording for our members to be able to look at this later on our digital content library. Thank you, Jane, for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Karianne, and thank you everyone too. Let me just share my screen and get, let me check, you can see the deck, all okay? All is good?
Everything looks good.
Everything looks good. Fantastic. Well, yeah, good morning. And thank you once again for joining and allowing me to share a little bit more about some lessons that I've learned from writing my book this last year on how empowered women empower women. And I have to tell you, this is actually the first presentation that I have given about the book. I actually only handed in my manuscript 2 weeks ago. This has been exciting for me the last couple of weeks to turn 300 pages into a 35-minute talk or so. We're going to dive right in, and I'm going to talk really fast, I think. No, we're going to have some fun. Let me get started. Okay, and let's just make sure I can advance the slides. There we go. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Rebecca Solnit, and she says, "Feminism is not a scheme to deprive men, but a campaign to liberate us all." And how true that is, because research after study after report shows that when women are involved, there is less war, more peace, more food security. There's a reduction in mortality and illiteracy, increases in GDP, increases in equity. And my God, women are even supposed to be a massive part of solving the climate crisis. So, there are no silver bullets, but I reckon advancing women and girls comes pretty damn close. And, furthermore, women, we create virtuous circles. Carrie-Anne just mentioned the ripple effects, and that is true. In the developing world, women will reinvest more than 90% of their wealth, of their earnings, back into their families, back into their communities. And for men, that is around 30 to 40%. So when we are empowered, when we have access to resource, women will reinvest their time, their money, their energy, their effort. And so when you empower a woman, you are empowering not only other women, but so many others with her. I like to call this a flywheel, with empowered women. We're already doing this, It's not that men and women aren't already helping women and girls. We are doing that in this beautiful virtuous circle, but it is a flywheel that I believe needs to be turning faster so that we can get there sooner, because this is still a reality. Number one cause of death for women is childbirth. 14 million children are married before the age of 18, and 32 million girls did not go to school today, not because they didn't want to. And 70% of our poorest people on earth are women. The World Economic Forum says that it's going to take 257 years at the current rate of progress for us to reach global gender equity. So it's clear we need to do better. Furthermore, this is a little closer to home, right? So this is us in our business roles as men and women. Only 28% of women are holding senior vice president roles. And I have to say, so my numbers are a little US skewed. So just wanted to bring that in. I know we're all over the world today. 21% in the C-suite, and those board numbers, not great. But let me tell you, these numbers are actually a vast improvement. We've been making some steady gains, but just as Carrie-Anne was saying, when we opened up, the COVID pandemic has really reminded us of the very fragile gains that we've made. 2 million women are said to be considering leaving the workforce today. So it is frightening to think about where we'll be another year from now with these numbers and women struggling so much because of the pandemic. I want to play a little game with you actually just for a moment. So believe it or not, during the pandemic, that was a bumper year for companies going IPO. That's taking their company public on the New York Stock Exchange. There were 442 countries that filed to go IPO. So I'm curious how many of them you think were led by women. And if you have access, why don't you just throw into chat how many women you think took their company public out of those 442 last year? 2, 30%, 5, 20. Well, actually, Carrie-Anne, you were pretty close, and Alejandra as well, because the number is 4. 4 out of 442. And that was shocking to me. Actually, if you go back, I did for research for my book, if you go back, the New York Stock Exchange was founded in 1817, more than 200 years ago. And since the beginning of the founding of the New York Stock Exchange, thousands and thousands of companies have gone public, and only 31 out of thousands and thousands of companies for more than the last 200 years have been able to take their company public with a woman who was involved right from the very beginning. And that number is just absolutely shocking to me. And as business leaders, I'm sure you think that's the same. But here's a shining light here. This is Whitney Wolfhard. Maybe you saw her story earlier last month. She actually became the youngest female entrepreneur to take her company public. She also became, at 31 years old, the youngest self-made female billionaire. And I just love this picture of her with her child on her side. She has more than 70% of her board members being women. And so this is a terrific example to us all, I think, of women doing great things and being the example to us all. So thanks for playing along with me. It just, it was shocking when I was doing my research to discover these numbers. And again, we need to change that. So look, it's clear we need laws change, we need policy updated, we need an end to systemic gender bias and systemic racial bias too on every single level, because women are performing, we are doing what we need, but we are held back in many, many cases. There's a reason why the UN's Sustainable Development Goal number 5 is about achieving gender equity for women and girls, because when we do, we have the foundation for a more balanced, fairer, equitable, and peaceful world. So this was me. This was me a year ago. This was me depressed, demoralized, reading these numbers about the backward progress that women were making because of the pandemic. And as Carrie-Anne was explaining, I run an organization that helps some of the most extraordinary young women leaders in social impact. I mean, they are doing the most incredible things, and I am filled with hope when I work with them. But the news, these statistics that were coming out, it really was shocking to me and frustrating. And so I actually at this time started to reconnect with other women who were working to advance women and girls around the world and check in with them and see how they were feeling, what were they doing, see if I could learn a little bit more about how they were thinking about not just regaining our losses, but maybe leapfrogging and seeing how can we turn up the dial to help women advance. And I have to say, there was a part of me that thought, I'm gonna unlock some magic solution. I'm gonna find some special thing. I'm gonna write a book about it. What I found was actually a lot of very small actions, which were quite unremarkable actually on their own. And I thought that was amazing, because I thought, actually, this is the book I want to write. This is a book because these are actions that we can all take, men and women. These are things that we can do every day to help a sister every day, everywhere, every time thrive, rise and thrive. So I have this book that's coming out, and I want to share with you some of the keys that I discovered from interviewing these business leaders, activists, humanitarians, entrepreneurs, in the hope that you will see that it is really in the sum of the parts, the collective action that we can all take in very small ways, that Rebecca Solnit said, just might liberate us all. Okay, so let me share. These are the 10 keys. Just say yes, tell her she's ready, stand behind her, help her help herself, actually talk about money. We're going to do that one today. Stand up for her, be the example, give her confidence, send the elevator down, and be a sister or a brother. So I chose 3 of them today for us to talk about. They were the 3 that I thought as incredible executives and CEOs as yourself that they might resonate most with you, and also that that you might be able to maximize the opportunity of them too. So I'm going to dive right in. So the first one is key number 7. It's be the example. And I know that being a role model is not new. It is not rocket science. But let me tell you, role models, they inspire us, they motivate us, they show us what's possible. They show us some shoes that we can walk in, and they encourage us to push a little farther, reach a little higher, try a little harder again. And the trouble is there just simply aren't enough role models and enough examples of women out there for the vast majority of women and girls to see themselves in your shoes. We need more women who we can meet every single day in our lives. And examples have shown that we need really scores and scores of different women, not just Kamala Harris being the first vice president, but we need a suite of women around us that becomes normal, that this is just what we expect to do. Sidebar note here, in the research I was doing, apparently women only occupy 0.5% of history books. So if we ever thought there was a problem with women being role models, that is one. So I want to share the story with you. I want to talk about Mitchell Baker. And so Mitchell Baker is the lady that's sitting next to the gentleman in the wheelchair on the right-hand side of the picture. Mitchell is the co-founder and 2-time CEO of Mozilla. They're the folks behind the Firefox web browser. And as you heard, I worked for Mozilla for 10 years. And in fact, I worked directly for Mitchell for 3 of those. I was her chief of staff. And so I got to know her really well. It was an honor, really one of the biggest honors and privileges of my life to work in this very intimate role with her. And the picture that I'm showing you is the inaugural class of the Internet Hall of Fame. So all of these wonderful ladies and gentlemen were really the founders of the internet. They built the internet that we get to know and love and use and hate at times today. Mitchell was one of only 3 women. Alongside her, there's Tim Berners-Lee, Vint Cerf, and Mitchell was part of that class. That was the level of impact this lady has had in the world. But she never saw herself as a role model. I would talk to her many, many times about this. She didn't have any role models. No one helped her on her way. When she looked around, there was nobody else. As a woman leader in technology, having this amount of influence on the world and on the web. And needless to say, when I first started working at Mozilla, I used to head up marketing in Europe. And I would be on press tour with Mitchell. This was 15 years ago. This was when Firefox was taking off like a rocket ship. And she was a rare breed. And I would go into meetings with journalists, and every single one of them would want to talk about her as a woman in technology, because she really was the only. And she was furious. She absolutely wanted to be taken seriously as an equal. She wanted to talk about her work, and she would get questions about her family, her asymmetrical haircut, which she still has at 62. People would want to know, how hard was it? What made her special? What did she think about this and that? And very often the work was secondary. And I've seen her nearly walk out of interviews. She was so furious. And listen, I get it. We should not have to talk about ourselves as women leaders. We should be just simply taken for the work that we are doing. But it was only years later that Mitchell realized her position. She realized the power and privilege that she has as a woman global leader, recognized on this level that she could use that power and influence to motivate other young women to take up a career in technology, even consider being a leader in this space. Since then, she has taken up a role. She's a part of the UN Council's, the UN Women's Council for Economic Empowerment, and has become a massive advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm proud to have worked with her. But She really struggled with the idea of a role model. She thought that simply doing the work was enough, and actually being an active ally, being an active role model was really critical. You know, we've got a lot, thankfully, look, children and little girls and boys have more opportunities these days. I had to show you this, one of my favorite things. I wish I had this when I was a kid. Lego came out with a Women of Massive kit. Barbie last year released a Maya Angelou doll, which was sold out immediately. You know, it's extraordinary to have these role models, and we need more of them. Next story is about Katia Lieben. She's the CEO and co-founder of the largest women's social network for working mothers. And I spoke to Katia specifically about role models because, you know, of her community as women and women as, excuse me, as mothers. And the first thing she brought to the table when I asked her, what do you think the most important things about being a role model as a woman? She said to be real, to show up with all the pain and struggle and bring your whole self to the table. Like, don't try and hide it. Don't put it to one side. Don't glorify it in the sense of the Instagram posts when you had a shitty day today, but you know, everything in the world is perfect. That when you reach out a hand to someone else and you let them know today was a tough day, you know, as a CEO, then you also make it possible for more people to realize, like, we're human too. We are struggling too, and that it is not perfect. There's a lot of hard work and a lot of reality. While I was interviewing Katia, her child, I don't think it was this little girl that's on her daughter here that's on her back, it was her younger one, was screaming and screaming in the background. And, you know, I think this is the reality for all of us while we're on Zoom these days. It is, we show more of our homes, our children interrupt us. We are being more real than we have ever been. And I had to comment to Katia about, at the moment we're talking about vulnerability, like how perfect it was that we couldn't hear ourselves think that her child was crying. And she said, you know, yeah, this is real life and that's okay. And I thought that was wonderful. So moving on to my own story, this is me with COVID hair, actually, where I no longer dye my hair. That's a thing that all of us are going through. So this is me with red hair, but I wanted to talk about my path. So I've been told that I can be a little intimidating, which I find incredibly hard to believe, but I've heard it a few times. And so there's something there. And I think it is, and I'm sure you are the same on the phone here, men and women, that you can reach a certain level and then people become nervous around you. They think you are, they hold you in a certain light. And they just think that you are incredibly smart, which we all are. But the reality for me is, you know, yeah, I am halfway smart. Wasn't the smartest kid at school. I've been very lucky. I've said yes a lot, but I've made a lot of mistakes. And when I started my career, I worked in a factory. So my very first job, this is what I love to tell people because it surprises them, is that I worked on a factory floor. For my first year, I followed in my mum's footsteps. She made hats, and my grandmother before her. I'm from a small town in the middle of England. And yeah, so I stood and I worked on a factory floor. It was my first job. And then they brought me into the offices and so on and so on. It went on from there. But it is surprising for people that that's how I started my career. And I have absolutely no shame. I'm delighted to tell people that this was my path and demystify success. So here's the wrap for Be the Example. Please recognize how far you've come because it has been far. If you don't have a role model, please try to be the role model to others that you wished you would have had. Lead on your own terms, of course, and show how you lead on your own terms, and then also demystify success and how you got here. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. And this is my favorite, actually talk about money. And I don't know how you feel about this, but the vast majority of women I talk to this is an awkward conversation. This is a complicated conversation. This is a conversation mixed with shame and guilt talking about money really is our last taboo, apart from maybe talking about the menopause, that we are not willing to talk about it. And that is a problem, because having money means greater self-sufficiency, greater independence, greater opportunity, greater access to more opportunities and more wealth that we can use for ourselves, but we can also use for the world around us. This is Sally Korchang. She's the CEO and co-founder of Ellevest. They were one of the very first female-led funds for women investors. And in fact, just this last week, they became the first $1 billion female investor fund, which is terrific. Great job. And Sally says, rather crudely at times, so warning, she says women would rather talk about what they did in the bedroom last night than actually talk about money. We're willing to talk about religion, politics, our weight, mental health, even dying. Then we talk about money. Fidelity did a study, and they said that 80% of us as women have refrained from talking about money, even with our most closest relatives and friends. So our husbands, our parents, our children, our everyone. We won't even talk to them about it. This is a really big problem, so we must work to change our attitude around money. We must change our relationship with it, and we must be willing to get more comfortable talking about it, because it is the key to unlocking a tremendous amount of power and influence. So I want to tell you a bunch of stories about women and money, and I'm struggling. And that is part of what I want to solve. So instead, I'm going to share with you a bunch of statistics, which some of you may know already, but I want to illustrate just how far-reaching this problem is. So let's go through a series of those real quick. This, we get paid less money. In fact, it's going to be decades before white women get paid the same amount as men, but it's actually going to be more than 100 years at the current rate for Black women to get paid the same amount as men, and more than 200 years for Latin women to get paid the same amount as men. This is a massive problem. But we save more. We're actually really good with money. We're exceptionally good with money. We save it, we take care of it, we nurture it. The trouble is with saving it, though, is that there is no wealth creation. It's almost 0% on our interest rates, when we could have as much as 9% if we were to invest it. And the crazy thing is that when we do invest, we are said to be better investors. We do our homework, we do the math, we're careful, we make good choices. The trouble is we do invest less. Merrill Lynch said that in one of their reports that one of women's biggest regrets was that they did not choose to invest their money. And this one absolutely kills me. My mom is 72 years old. She's not that old. She's not that young, living in the UK alone. My dad died 4 years ago. And so women live 6 to 8 years longer on average than men, but they retire with 2/3 as much money. And therefore they are more likely to live in poverty after retirement, the most fragile age. And yet, in my mind, this is not okay. And then why is that? Yeah, because we lack the financial literacy. We're not taught it as kids or as young women early in our careers, and we are not having these conversations. And this is incredibly important because McKinsey says by 2030, American women are expected to control much of the $30 trillion of financial assets. That is a huge amount of money. That is close to the annual GDP of the United States. And with that money, a lot of change can happen. Women are said to invest with 75% with their values. Women are more likely to invest in women-owned businesses. They're more likely to invest in minority-owned businesses. They care about sustainability. They care about workforce ethics. And so I am very excited to see a world in the next 20 years when women have got to grips with how to invest and how to spend their money, because that is a completely different economy that we might be birthing, that we have to have women feeling good about money and talking about money and using it in the way that they want to. money is a vehicle. You know, I come back to that flywheel that I was mentioning at the beginning, which I so love. And I just think that money is, you know, it's the lubricant, it's the grease that makes that flywheel turn faster. I want it humming. You know, whoever controls the money really controls the world. They decide what problems need fixing. They decide what has value. And when women get to be in control of these questions, like, there is no limit to what we can do. Sorry for getting super passionate, but this really, we really have to work to help us get more present and more familiar with money, because it is a vehicle that can make massive amounts of change. So here's your little wrap. Start the conversation. Wow, it's hard. It's super hard. I know it's awkward. Maybe even just telling them that you heard about this in a presentation today and, hey, we should have a conversation sometime. Like, that would be an opener for you. If you've got a personal financial advisor, maybe just tell someone that, you know, or like, hey, last week I spoke with my financial advisor. It might just give someone an opportunity to think, maybe I should get one of those, you know, to help me figure out my money and my wealth. If you do invest already, share some tips, tell her why you invest. You know, again, being able to tell people that you do these things gives them an opportunity to think, wow, I might do that. Like, I should learn more, and so on. So, you know, women love to share. We're great at it. So why not share more about how we invest our money and help us all get there? Okay. This is the last one. Send the elevator down. And you've probably heard about this one in business. And the metaphor I like to use is, you know, right now, all of us on this call, I'm pretty sure we could say we're already standing on top of the mountain, you know, and we're looking down and we can see just how far we've come. And I hope that you can do that and you feel a deep sense of pride and achievement, because there was no map for you. There was no compass, no guide. I'm sure there were some cheerleaders, but you've really had to struggle to get where you are. And, you know, it's true. It should not have been that hard. It should not be so hard that not every woman will make it. And it should not be so hard to climb that mountain that women aren't even willing to try, right? Because they know that there is a massive part that they will fail. They will not succeed. So what I'm saying here with sending the elevator down is that if we see women in the foothills, no matter your elevation, no matter how far you are up that mountain, let's reach down and let's take her hand and let's help her up. Okay. This is a controversial figure. This is Sheryl Sandberg. She wrote the book Lean In almost 10 years ago. And this is her co-founder, Rachel Thomas. And she's the co-founder and CEO of Lean In. And every year, they do a women in the workplace study with McKinsey. They interview thousands of women across a multitude of businesses, and they basically are telling the latest statistics, which is where I got some of those numbers from before. Just to recap, from 2015 to 2020, women in senior vice president roles moved from 23 to 28%. Women in the C-suite from 17 to 21%. Pretty slim gains, but going in the right direction. The part that I want to point you to is the broken rung, what they call the broken rung. And when I was talking with Rachel Thomas for my book, this is what she said. She said, many companies are aware of the glass ceiling and they're working to support women reaching the highest level senior ranks in their organizations. But in reality, however, women are disadvantaged from the get-go. They can't get a first foot on the ladder and they can never catch up. And this is a problem. So this is where I want to point us to look at the young women leaders in our midst, because young women leaders are over-mentored and they are under-sponsored. This is some of the numbers again from McKinsey. For every 100 men promoted for every 100 men promoted to manager for the first time, only 85 are women, and only 58 are Black women. So that means that first-time managers, as a percentage, 38% are women, 62% are men in this first-time manager role. So you can imagine as time goes on how the delta becomes further and further away for women to get into the higher levels of management. The thing that struck me about this McKinsey survey is that they've done this every year for 6 years, and this broken rung number has not moved. It has not moved at all. And yet we are more aware. So I really want us to focus on the young women who are working hard. You know, they are asking for promotions, but they are being overlooked. So we can do what we can to make sure they are sponsored, they are being advocated for, they have the skills, and they are ready. And this is a kind of like a sidebar story that I wanted to share, which is about the US military. I was very privileged to talk to Colonel Candace Frost. And Colonel Candace is the US Army's glass ceiling breaker extraordinaire. She was the first woman in so many of the last 20 years in her career in the US Army. One of them, just one, she was the first woman out of 5,500 men to join the 82nd Airborne Division, which is the elite parachute battalion, if you will, parachuting into enemy territories. And she was also served active duty in Afghanistan as a single mom of 2 kids, which I don't even know how that is possible. But she has spent her career, first of all, being the first, and secondly, focusing on bringing these young women in the US military forward. That is where she focuses her time and her energy. And she says rather unabashedly, by the way, that if we have reached this position of power and influence, then we have a responsibility to help bring those young women forward, maybe even an obligation, which, you know, I agree with. And I think that if a woman can do this in one of the most gendered professions in the world, in the US Army, then there's a lot of hope for us all. So here's the wrap for this. Hire and promote her if you can. If you have responsibility, let's make sure we're not forgetting, that we're not overlooking our young women leaders. Sponsor her if you can, give her new projects, responsibilities, and be a coach and teach her, because we must help our younger women start to rise, because they need to fulfill their potential down the line. Okay, we're getting to the end here, and then we're going to jump into questions. So, you know, I've had a little bit of saboteur for myself. I'm like, God, are these keys, are they worth anything? Are they just, we already know all of these things, you know, we know we should be standing behind her, just telling her she's ready. They don't seem remarkable, you know, but for me, it is in the sum of the parts and the collection of the groundswell of being an active ally, that we can do this every day for every woman everywhere, whether we are a man or a woman, to be that backbone to help bring her forward. All right, so you'll know by now that I'm a bit of I'm an idealist, I'm a dreamer. I definitely want the world to live in peace and harmony, and you might think I'm just crazy for wanting that. But, you know, I really do imagine a world where there are more empowered women. And when they are, that means that we will have that more peaceful, equitable, more balanced world, a sufficient world, and one where it is more just and fair for all of us. I want to leave you with one of these quotes. So I got to see Lynn Twist speak at a TED Women event many years ago. I don't know if you know Lynn Twist. She's an activist and author, female activist, and she's in her 90s by now. And I became an instant fan of her when she told this story, which I love to tell, about how when women are missing from the conversations, when we are missing from the table of decision making, then the world is like a dove which is only flying with one wing, and it's tired it's tired and it's exhausted. And is it any wonder that there are so many problems to fix? And she said, but when women rise, when women are seen as equals, then it is only when both wings are beating together and in unison, then we can not only fly once again, but we can finally soar. So I'll leave you with this. It's sort of like, well, what if we are actually indeed the ones we've been waiting for? We need these big policy changes and laws changed. But what if it is actually in the multitude of 100,000 small actions of what we inherently know how to do best, with love, with care, with ease, that will get us to start a quiet revolution in our own houses, in our own offices, and in the world. I like to say, we are our mother's daughters, and we're all capable of greatness when we're loved and we're held and we're supported and we're believed in. And we are mothers in our own right. We're the mother of all daughters. We're the mother of the earth. And we can be part of a groundswell of change. We can do this every moment, in every way, and in a way that cannot be ignored. And I do believe this is how we will rise. Okay, well, that's what I had for you today. I wanted to just quickly share with you, I hope this is okay. This is my email address, of course. I'd be delighted to hear from you. Please do reach out or connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me. There's only one Jane Finette, as far as I know. And I am still writing my book. So I'm in the revision part. I've got a lot of edits to go before the book is published in August. And I am looking for women who care about the subject to become part of what I'm calling my heroine circle, maybe to read some early chapters, give me some feedback, as much or as little as you want. So if you're interested, I'd be delighted to hear from you, and please do drop me a line. And with all that being said, Carrie Ann, I think we want to take some questions now. Thank you so much for having me, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jane. Fabulous presentation. So first and foremost, the first question right off the bat is, can we give them access to this presentation, or at least like the data points that are in it, because they really found
most
that
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, I'll zip it as a PDF, and then Carrie Ann can share.
I'll get that out to you guys. Sure.
Absolutely.
So we have two questions that kind of go together, and it has to do with that broken rung.
Right.
So most women stay at the, if they reach the higher echelons of leadership, they stay within the C-suite, and they don't assume that CEO role. And there's another question that goes kind of hand in hand with that, which is, do you have more research about the reasons to share on why the deficits also in the early stage part of women career occurs? And so they just wanted to know sort of what to focus on and the most important pain points at that stage as well. So it's kind of across the spectrum there, but.
Okay, yeah. So let me just start with the broken rung piece and then pop back up. There is, I'm sure that, and if you took part in the Power Up sessions, which I know you've been doing this month, I'm sure you talked about bias, about unconscious bias, and and the truth is we are all biased, men, women, black, white, you name it. Like we all, that's just part of our human makeup, and so often women are overlooked both by men and women in these junior roles because women are. It is shown that women do need to work harder. We're not believed as much to be ready, and that women will have to do the extra work, the extra lift. I would say that I do think, women are not great at talking about their achievements. So we're not as visible. And that can be part of the challenge too. So we're not pushing ourselves quite as much. And that in itself has its own bias and problems, because when women do talk about their achievements, we're very often then sort of like, told that we're bragging, told that we're being a bit brash and a bit, above our station. So you're kind of like, it's called the double bind, where you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But it's certainly not that women aren't working hard enough and that women don't want to be taking that first management role. It is that they are overlooked. So that's that. And then the clarifying question just on was the question, Carrie Ann, and forgive me for not looking in chat, everyone. Was it how to move into the C-suite? That was that next, the other question?
They talked about, no, the question was, how come, so if they make it to the higher echelons of leadership, they make it into the C-suite and they don't take on the role of CEO. So that drop off rate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have to say that I don't know the answer specifically for that. What I would say is that what I do see though is this is where women end up founding their own companies, right? Is that you start to see women just completely drop out. I mean, it is a numbers game. Only so many people can become a CEO, right? If you're in the C-suite, and then I totally think that the same reasons that I was just talking about, by the way, for the young women apply to the senior women too, is that it's a double bind again. You're not seen as ready, you're not seen as accomplished enough when you're more than accomplished and so on. But what I do see the result of that is that there are more women entrepreneurs. And actually, when you look in the United States, for the fastest growing demographic of women entrepreneurs are Black women. And that is squarely because they are not getting promoted, and they are not even getting promoted into the C-suite. Yeah.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Marissa that's saying, what are the main challenges that you've discovered through this research that would be reasons as to why does not allow women to help at her full potential other women? So what are some blockers that you're seeing for women that maybe they're not even aware, or you were talking about bias, that they're not being a sister, they're not, doing these small actions every day. What do you see as kind of blocking that from,
it's
from that being a priority?
It's a really wonderful question. Thank you so much for asking that. And this is a question I started asking it at the beginning of my research, and then I got very different opinions, of which I almost felt like I was walking on eggshells. So people would throw back at me a Madeleine Albright quote, which is, "There is a special place in hell for women who don't help women." And quite frankly, I just absolutely abhor that quote. I really do, because I honestly think women want to help women. Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't want to help a sister, really. And what I did hear from the people that I interviewed was that there's a certain part of us, and this kind of breaks my heart, is that we still actually feel disenfranchised. We actually think that what we do will not make a difference, that those statistics are so great and so Herculean that the one thing that I can do, which is even just going and getting a cup of coffee with her and just, debunking what your review just said, is not going to be enough. And I really want to challenge us on that, both for men and women, that being an ally, I like to say there's an active ally, is bringing that intention around it, and it, I don't know if this changes anything for you. I write in the book there's a gentleman called James Clear. He wrote the book, Atomic Habits. I don't know if anyone is familiar. It's called Atomic Habits. And it's completely unconnected to empowering women. But what struck me, so he talks about, it's about habits. And so he talks about people are more likely to stop smoking if they don't say, I quit smoking, but they say, I'm a non-smoker or something like this. Or people are more likely to work out if instead of saying, I go run, they actually identify as I'm a runner. And I love this idea of us being, we help women every day. We open our network, we introduce someone, we have a conversation. These are all the things. But if we can internalize that as us being an activist, I mean, I'm definitely more on the activist spectrum, so you'll have to forgive me on that. That's not for everyone. But I love to think that, you know, I might reach out because it is a form of activism to reach out and say, how are you doing today? Or what is it that I can do to help you? And that when someone reaches out and asks for help, you just say yes, you know, and whatever it is, 10-minute conversation, an introduction to someone, all of that is absolutely possible.
It's amazing. I love that you're focusing on those small actions that kind of swell up into something really important that we might not always see in the moment, but you know, looking back and seeing the progress we've made is so important as well.
It is, and it, you know, that's they say my own saboteur was like, God, is it even worth writing a book about this? Really, you know, it's sort of like, it seems so unremarkable, and yet they are the things that we can all do every day en masse. And it is about as I said, the flywheel turning faster. Yeah.
So I think we have time for just one last question. There's
Great.
one in the chat that we haven't gotten to yet, which is regarding the money talk. So going back to how do we talk about that without sounding like we're bragging and more as empowering? And I think that goes for a lot of communication as women, you know, we don't, you spoke on that a little bit in terms of we don't want to sound show offish, but empowering in the approach that we take.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And believe me, I was I was practicing my presentation yesterday, and my husband was listening to me, and I came up with that stat from Fidelity of the 80% that don't talk even with their family about it. And the first thing he said to me was, well, you don't talk about it with me. So believe me, just because I wrote this thing doesn't mean I'm practicing it. So we all need to practice. So what I've seen though is, first of all, I mean, maybe some of the points in the deck today are openings, you know, like, did you know that by 2030, you know, women are going to hold the majority of the wealth? You know, did you know that, you know, we could be making 9% more on our interest? Did you know that we retire with 2/3 less money? You know, like, and it doesn't have to be that way. You know, it's just decisions, like the mechanisms exist. I think one of the things that I'm in love with actually is an organization. I have to tout them, but believe me, it's my opinion, so I'm not, take it with a pinch of salt. That is an organization called C-Note. It's Note, C-N-O-T-E, and they're an investment mechanism which is for women investing in women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. And I see a lot of people, and I should tell you that this lady is on my board of the Coaching Fellowship, so full disclosure here. But what I love is that when women have conversations about money, so it might seem like bragging, but the good that we do with that money, yes, we want to have our own wealth creation for ourselves and our families, but the way we invest is very often different. And what we want to achieve, you know, women want to have a return on investment, but they also want to have a return on the impact that investment makes. And I think that is a very different conversation. I talked to a lady called Marla Blow. She was until just a couple of weeks ago the head of the Center of Inclusion at MasterCard, and she just became the leader of Skull Foundation, which is a very exciting move for her. But she said that she would. She has high court judges that won't talk about investing. For similar reasons, for shame, that she should know what she's doing by now in this position of power and achievement, and also that she doesn't want to come across as bragging. But she talks, apparently she started talking with people in her kids, like basically soccer moms. So she literally puts this out and starts with berefting herself, saying, I was ashamed of this, you know, but I know it's important to have this conversation. So it takes a lot of courage, I know, on our part to start, but it's doable. Yeah, and Carrie Ann, I know we're getting to the end.
Well,
Yeah,
we're getting
yeah.
into the end here, but it's been fabulous, and we're going to get this content out to all of our members. Thank you so much for being with us. I think it was such an important topic. It's an amazing way to close out the month, and just start thinking about those little actions, aligning ourselves with, you know, the things that we've come across this month and the awareness that have been brought out of it, and start acting. And I think that that's, you know, small steps every day. So thank you so much for being with us, Jane. I've put Jane's email in there, and please do let her know if you want to be part of the heroine community. I think that that's going to be an amazing opportunity. Thank you all for being with us, and thank you, Jane.
Thank you.